Alright guys, welcome back to the channel. This is arguably one of the biggest videos that I put together for the entire year. How is that, you might ask? Well, it's the forecasts, or as people call it, predictions for the upcoming year. We're looking at a roadmap here as to what I think might occur and how I'm looking to invest and trade in the markets. Now, the forecasts I'll review on a monthly basis on the channel, so pretty good segue into liking the content if you do want to see more of this on your streams, on your news feeds, and of course, subscribing to the channel if you are new here. I'm going to cover Bitcoin, cryptos, the stock markets, and the real estate markets. And I've been doing this for several years for my own portfolios, and I've been doing it publicly for several years, as you'll see with some of the updates that we will go through on the channel to review how these forecasts have occurred. Because it's one thing to make forecasts, it's another thing to see how accurate they have been across the many years that we've been doing it here on the channel. So hopefully you've enjoyed this over the years. Hopefully if you have been following along, you've been making some good money from your own analysis and taking some information from elsewhere out there and turning it into your own trading and investing plans. Here is our big update, our 2025 update for Bitcoin, crypto, the stock markets, real estate, US, Australia, and a little bit for the UK there as well. And also some wild cards that I'll throw in with what I think might occur in the first half and maybe in the second half of 2025. Now, with everything that I'm talking about in today's video, there are going to be more updates on the channel. I'm going to go into more detail specifically with how I'm navigating these markets and my investments with TIA Premium. So if you are a member, stay tuned for that. That's right down here if you want to join TIA Premium. There's a link to it, 7-day risk-free trial. I'll also be using the TIA GAN Swing Pro and more indicators that we have within that as well. There's a link to that again. And just to finish off some of the shills here, X is where I'll also do some updates with more price targets and other support and resistance levels along the way throughout the year. I say to follow there so that you don't follow any other accounts that are impersonating my account, particularly on YouTube, X, and Instagram, and I don't have an Instagram or Telegram. So all the official links will be in the video description. Don't get scammed out there. Things are getting hot, obviously, with bull markets that are going on. More and more scammers are out there. So with that done, you hitting the like button, making the little thing go crazy, let's kick it off with the agenda for my forecast, or as they call it in the game, predictions for 2025. Agenda as always, so I can try and stay on track and get these videos done in under 30 minutes. We'll see how we go. But I want to talk about how I'm putting this together because we need to have a bit of a background. I don't do these things like everyone else. What I see anyway is that people try to put narratives together for the upcoming year. I don't necessarily like narratives because I'm not trading off of narratives. I trade off charts. I trade off price charts. And so that's where I'm putting most of my focus. It's going to be primarily on price, and that's going to be the driving force behind everything. I know some like to put it into narratives. They like to figure out what's going on with Bitcoin ETFs, and they look at the next narrative of some other company and the narrative of who's in government and who is out of it, as we've seen over the last couple of years, and what that's going to mean to the market. They look at stable coins and all sorts of things. That's not my game. Price is going to be the main focus. Now I have a few recent forecasts. Bitcoin in particular is what I have found where I found my strengths to lie. Altcoins can do with a little bit of tuning up. I don't expect to get everything 100% correct. There are going to be things that I don't get correct, and I think it's important to mention that earlier in the videos. Overall, I have seen from the results and what I've posted online, most of the time it's been going relatively well for the macro picture here, right? For the short-term stuff, however, for a bit of fun, the 3-day rule is something that we have used very successfully now for the last 12 or so months. March 2024 was one of the big times, and the signal that I'm discussing here is the 3-day rule. Now it can be used from lows as well, but in this case it's worked very well from tops because Bitcoin is very emotional. People get a bit too excited at the peaks, and then when the market comes down for 3 days straight from a very significant top, in the case it was in March, when it comes down from that point, they think it's time to buy the dip. But we know it's probably not time to buy the dip. That's the point of this rule here. It's not time yet, and it could take a lot longer than people imagine it because people are all very hyped up for this period, and then the thing goes sideways. So we've got to get through this in half an hour. Essentially, the 3-day rule worked very, very well. That's our Gann Swing Pro. Turn that on here. Turn on show bar type, because as you can see, the bars themselves, that is green, but it's not, we're not looking at it in terms of a green day. We're looking at it in terms of a down or an up day. Okay, we talked about that, and it's beyond the scope of our forecast video. But there is a signal, 1, 2, 3, and we were down for nearly, or below the high for nearly 8 months when everyone was talking about it going straight up. Now it's happened again, so it's going to be interesting to see how this video progresses. Is it going to turn out like fine wine or soured milk? We'll see in the next month or two. But of course, I'm going to update this every month along the way with other rules that pop up, other signals and indicators, of course. So we've seen it here, 1, 2, 3. Yes, it's a green bar, but it's a down day, not a green or red day. Okay. So the signal's there, and we are now down for longer than any other previous move in this move to the upside. So we've had 13 days underneath the top, and so far we've now come into our 13th day. It's very unlikely that today's bar is going to shoot to 108K, so I dare say this rule has worked out yet again. Bitcoin under 60K, great risk reward. Tick that off the list. Videos are on the channel. Posts are on X. I think that's turned out very, very well. Bitcoin May, August, September, October lows all worked out very, very well as well. There's May. It did go a little lower, of course, but overall we've had the higher lows form, and that was really good. So the one thing I don't think worked out very well was the altcoin buy the dip in April. There was still more time to go for lower prices on some alts. Other alts were going up, and so I would cross that off as a fail, but Bitcoin very, very well for this stage of the market. So that's the recent short term. The long-term historical is the next thing that we have to have a look at here. And I've got posts on X that you can review in 2022 and end of 2023, early 2024, in terms of what I was thinking was going to happen in the following year. And remember, at the time, things were mostly opposite to what I was saying here. And you can review that in a lot of the comments that come up on the channel. So it's not to have a go at anyone, you know, some great responses here. At the end of the day, I just like to learn about the markets and human psychology with how people respond to market conditions. And in 2022, so exactly 2 years ago now, these were very unpopular opinions. Main thing was everyone thought a recession was happening. Everyone, 80, 90% of people thought real estate was going to crash. They thought the S&P, they thought stock markets were going to crash as well. And they thought Bitcoin was going to come down a lot further than where it currently was, right? And so we take a look at the chart. This is where I did that first post at this low here. That was a higher low. Then March happened, which was the banking crisis, higher low, and the market went up from that point. So I'm not trying to toot my own horn here. I just want to look at what happened and what did well, what didn't do well. Out of that year, there was only 6, and I'm starting to improve and put more and more into these. So I think out of the 6 is pretty much spot on. Some would argue that crypto was a good time to DCA at the end of 2022. I'd say out of the millions that are out there, it's going to be a pretty difficult game to play. But let's call it, I failed at crypto and got the other 5 out of 6 right. I think that's a pretty good record there. S&P going up, real estate going up. I bought more real estate through 22 and 2023. SP500 was obviously going up, which helped us identify Bitcoin also going up. You needed to see strength in the traditional markets for there to be strength for BTC. And Europe didn't freeze. That was a big topic at the time. Okay, next up is for the following year. I put this out on January 1st, call it 31st, so basically a year ago now. This is back onto the long-term historicals here. This is where it was on the chart. So as it was coming into a double top with the previous old all-time high, small correction, and then the market has basically powered away from that point. The S&P is up now 25% since that post, or roughly around 25%. From the first post here, let's take a look. That was the 22nd of December. The S&P is now up 55%. And of course, for Bitcoin, it's up 500% from that December low. We're looking at this in terms of the top 13. Interest rate cuts, pause hikes will not collapse the market. I think that gets a check because, well, the market's gone higher in 2024. Here's 2024. Market is up, and we've actually seen cuts. The next thing on that list, bearish inflation narrative will die out. Well, maybe it's still there, but the markets have gone up. And at the end of the day, we trade the markets. We don't trade news headlines. So bearish inflation narrative, I would say it's less. Of course, it's subjective. You can put it down to a tick or a cross. I'm ticking that one off. Recession or no recession, markets will likely close higher. Well, I think that's a definite unless in the next 2 days the market collapsed and fell down a ridiculous amount. And there's probably a few people that would think that it would fall 20% in a day. But I think we could safely say now that that is ticked off. Bitcoin won't trade up below 25 grand. Well, remember at the time it was 42 and it wasn't confirmed that we were, well, for most people, it wasn't confirmed we were in a bull market. But I'll tick that one off as well. That's 25K. Bitcoin will close higher than it opened. Yep, so that was an up year. That's how I can use this information to trade the markets. If I think it's going to be higher in 6 to 12 months' time, well, obviously I buy. If I think it's going to be lower, then I wait, or I have a shorter term outlook on the market, try to trade it shorter term and then get out before it starts to collapse. Number 6, US stock markets won't trade below October 2023. At the time, that was a very significant low, and it still is. There is the low, and we were only here. At the time, people were looking at double tops and this coming down to crash, recession on, game over, that sort of thing, right? Didn't happen. So again, another tick. Banking crisis low won't be broken. Yep, that was March. So we get a tick on that. Didn't break that low, which means we can then establish our position as to what we want to do with our money in the market. That's the whole point of this. Like, how can we actually take action on the forecast that we put together? Number 8, no blow off top in 2024. I don't see a blow off top here. That was a bit of a narrative that was running around the socials, right? I don't see a blow off top. It could be, maybe that happens and then next year it all collapses and blow off top is correct, but I don't think that's the case now, but we'll revisit next year as well. Number 9, US stock markets will close higher. Tick, well, yeah, they've closed higher. 2 more days. If it collapses 20%, you can come back at me. Number 10, more bullish sentiment enters all markets in the second half. Remember, I wrote this, where did I write this? 1st of January, okay? So this is now the end of December 2024, 12 months later. And I think most can say that we have seen more bullish sentiment entering the markets, especially after November when Trump was elected. And I'd say that we're in the Wall Street cheat sheet, sort of that hope to optimism phase of the market. Real estate, USA, Australia, UK will close higher. That is also true, and I'll come to that on the actually, I'll just show you the charts now. Here is the United States Case-Shiller Home Price Index. They have closed higher. Well, that's September. Once we get the data for December, I'd dare say it's still going to be higher than this January reading here. You had readings here at around 316 on the Case-Shiller Home Price Index. That's for the US. And I know some people do not agree with the Case-Shiller Home Price Index. You can take a look at Redfin. You can take a look at whatever data you want to have a look at. Overall, you're seeing a year-over-year increase on markets. November, home prices were up 5.4%. And of course, some people, as I said, aren't going to agree with it, but just take a look at some of the fastest growing cities there. You also have other cities which are going down. And so we're just looking at a national number here, okay? So there is always going to be cities where the prices are going down, but nationally speaking, the data from what I can see is showing an increase and people are getting a little bit squeezed in their home prices as well. So again, I would say that is on the money, that's up. And we also saw it with Australia. Australia is up. I don't think anyone in Australia can basically disagree with that. We're seeing higher and higher prices, except for units in Melbourne inner city, very, very much oversupplied there. And we can also take a quick look at the UK market here. Great Britain, United Kingdom House Price Index, new all-time high prices. That's for real estate. And we identified this low in 2023 with members in TIA Premium because we were seeing higher prices in the US. And UK and Australia typically lag the US. So if you're getting a signal, a leading indicator from somewhere else around the globe, biggest economy in the world, well, then this is going to help you get into the real estate market. And this, in some cases, has helped many of our members make some significant returns, some significant capital gains on their real estate. That would be a huge one if you were interested in learning more about this and being around a community who are long-term investors, who are active traders in the market. As I said, TI Premium link down below. Okay, so that's real estate. Strong crypto projects will outperform Bitcoin. Yes, but doesn't mean that I got onto them. It just means that that's what I was looking at here. Strong crypto projects will outperform Bitcoin. And the 13th one here, ETH will outperform Bitcoin. Big fat fail. It did not do it. I got more on that for this video as well. 14th bonus wildcard entrance here. I said more bearish narratives will come and go, and the wall of worry will continue to go higher. Basically, markets will continue to go higher. People will continue to fade, or that bearish narrative will continue to fade. We heard a lot about geopolitics and all this sort of BS that happened last year. And well, now we've got the results. 2024 was much, much, much higher after all of that nonsense. So now we get on to the 2025 forecast with a little bit of looking back at history as well. This is what I do day to day. I like to revisit what I've done so that I can hopefully improve with where I'm going next. Some people just want what happens next. It's very, very difficult to do, extremely difficult to do. So we're going to have a look at the first half of 2025. I believe that is here. And I'm looking at this with the forward returns dashboard for TIA indicator suite. Now, the point of this is that I think the first half might have some sort of correction. That's kind of the way that I'm playing the market at the moment. The first half for the stock markets will have a correction. I suspect the current correction that we're in with BTC from the top of 108 will culminate in the first quarter of 2025, and then we sort of head up from there. I'd love to see how this goes in the next 3 to 6 months to see how well, it's all sort of fared. But not to make the video go too long, couple of very brief reasons why this is. Forward returns, looking at the Dow Jones, which has the most amount of data. We could use any number here. S&P and Dow Jones are going to be the best to look at here for the overall market. But just taking a look, this goes back to 1900. There's 59% chance for both quarter one and quarter two to have a positive return, which means they're the lowest out of all four, but only marginally from quarter three, which is also a bit of a negative quarter as well, or can be 4 out of 10 times. But on top of the first 6 months only being marginally lower than the last 2 quarters, looking at the Dow Jones, as it has the most history, of course, and just looking at the recent history of where these corrections and tops and lows have formed, March, February, typically March seems to be a pretty good time that you would see some sort of correction, or at least a corrective low. Just going back in recent history, we don't have time to go back through the 124 years, but essentially you've got April. So starting off here with April having a correction. This is for 2024. The 2 biggest corrections for 2024 were the April low and the August low, and they happened quite quickly as well. It's just a few days. The total corrections, at least on the Dow Jones, was about 7%, and for this one here, March top into that low was about 6%, and obviously for the S&P it was about 9%. Now you've got 2023 March low, a very, very emotional time. So there was a big low there, big reversal as well. That was the old banking non-crisis. Everyone was thinking it was a crisis, and it rallied from that point. You've also got the top that came in January, and then a correction into February, which is when you had the Russia invading Ukraine war begin as well. So again, another very, very emotional time for the world. You had January 2021. There's a correction on the way up out of the COVID low. You had the COVID low in March, huge, huge emotional time. February, big, big, big correction as well. So again, a huge emotional time, and that was the top for that period there until it got taken out later in 2020. Going back to 2018, so now looking back sort of 6-7 years as well, you've got the correction in February, top in January, correction in February, and then basically bottoming out in April. The rest of the year was up there until you got to, well, December and the correction. Now I could keep taking this back, but I'll only do one more here. Had a very, very big move into the low of the GFC low. So January top, February crash, March crash into the final low of that period. Correction, and then the market bounced and away from there. So looking at that first quarter, this could be that area that we see some sort of movement, especially with December being a reversal so far. You've got a higher high here, so it could be the top for the market for this period. And we get some sort of correction now because the market is in that momentum, I would say. Again, extremely early days. We're not even in 2025, and I'm trying to make a forecast here for that period. If I had to take a guess, which is obviously what this is about, that's what I would look for. Now, I've talked about that a lot, and if that is to occur, well, probably something's going to happen to Bitcoin and cryptos in that period as well. And how I would use that is, well, if I still see the macro cycle being up, I would suspect that the fear would come out at that time, could be a good risk reward to get into those projects that you really love, potentially Bitcoin as well. The risk reward improves because it's down lower, but the macro picture still remains up. And so that's a better buy the dip opportunity for anything that's that's on your radar for a good investment or good trade over the course of 2025. So that's the really, really big point there. Number 4, my forecast. So let's have a look. I've got real estate coming up, economic data, stock markets, etc. So let's now move on to 2025, and I'll start with real estate. I've just done 2025, the first half. I think there is going to be the correction. And I think I've got a percentage about that a little further down, but I'll get to that in a second. Real estate, US, UK, Australia will finish higher. Weekly and monthly updates, you get the idea. We'll have it on TIA Premium. But essentially, my forecast here, which I'll post a nice outlay, will be on X. And I'll say US, UK, Australia will likely finish higher for their real estate. And I just showed that on the charts as well. Trends are up, broken into new all-time highs here for at least the UK and Australia. The US is taking a bit of a break at this point. So we'll obviously have to continue to update this as well. Now, the next point I had here, the next forecast, the economic data, I think interest rates may in fact rise again in the second half of 2025, maybe into 2026. First half, I think people are still trying to figure out what's going on, and maybe we have that correction. Therefore, I don't think they would want to raise rates while that correction is going on. It wouldn't be met very, very well from the public, and especially with Trump getting in as well, all that sort of stuff. So I think I'm looking to checking out the market, how it goes later in 2025. If we do start to see the prices go up again, maybe that'll come into the picture. But I'm going to put it down there and take a stab at, we're going to see interest rates, at least in this stage, before the cycle is out, we will definitely see an interest rate rise. Next up are the price targets now for the S&P 500, SPX. So I think it'll get to at least 6,700, potentially 7,400 by the end of the cycle. We'll leave that for later because I don't think that's going to happen in 2025, but probably at least 6,700. And why am I talking about 6,700? 6,700 has a couple of price clusters or a couple of price targets making a cluster here. I'm looking at the entire range from the October low to the, the July top projected off the August low. That we have now almost dead on hit the 6,100 level, which was one of my price targets earlier in the year. Thought 6,100 had some pretty good price clusters there. It looked like we could get to it. We've now, a few points off. It was 0.3% away from that price now. So I think over this next period, we could get to 67. You've got this range, and we have a larger range here from the COVID low to the top projected off the low. And these have all been working relatively well. Look at that, it's hit 50%, little correction, powered away and hit the 100% of that line, which comes in at 61.18. So 67 is my next target, and then I'm looking towards 74 if it can get there. In terms of percentages, this doesn't seem too far off, right? 12% on the year. Considering the last 2 years have done roughly about 25% a year for the S&P 500, chuck it on the monthly or the yearly here, and you can see that entire year was 24%, and this year currently is at 25%. From the lows though, low to the high, because the number just has to be hit, that's 26%, low to the high, 30%. So this year has done an entire range of 30%. So all I'm saying is that it's going to hit, I think it's going to hit roughly around 6,700 in the year, potentially even further, potentially even 7,000. But I'm going to stick to something a little bit more conservative here at 6,700, while most people might still be sitting on the fence of it actually going any further. And they'll get even less if we get this correction in the first half of 2025. I think people would definitely think that 67 would be absolutely crazy. All right, so that's the first one there. I'll continue to update that in other places. As for more on the S&P, I doubt the August 2024 low is going to get broken. So here it is here. That's the low there with the red arrow. If that does, the market changes in my opinion. So we'll continue to follow that up. But as it stands, macro bull market should not take out these lows around here from 4,800 to about 5,100 points. So I doubt that's going to happen. That's for this cycle, of course. S&P will not trade below 51. So that's on its own there, just in terms of a price. As for the NASDAQ and the Dow Jones, you have to look to the price for that August low. Now, S&P, NASDAQ, Dow Jones, all US stock markets will close higher, but not without a significant correction, 8 to 12%. I'm going to go out on a limb here only because there was a couple of comments from the last time that they thought it was an easy list. You're hardly challenging yourself. I expect a clean sweep in a year's time. So I was nearly there, right? We just missed out on ETH, and I got way too confident in ETH breaking BTC, but I think that might change this time. So why I'm doing this, why I'm making things a little bit tougher on myself, is so that I can see how it all evolves in 12 months' time. So I'm trying to get a little bit more specific with how these are working out. 8 to 12% correction, if that was to happen from this current top, that's for the SP 500. That's that 8% SP 500 only. NASDAQ, Dow Jones, they're going to be different. SP 500 only there. If that was from this top and the correction happens now, 8% is a price point of about 5,600 points. Still okay, that'd be the 50% level. 12% would get a little bit crazy from this price point. That'd be at 53.60. So I don't know if it's going to be a 12% from here, but it would still mean that the August low would be intact, which means the overall bull market should still be intact, and that would still be okay for the Bitcoin cycle. However, that would be crazy, crazy dumps across Bitcoin and crypto if that were to happen. So that's my next one there. I'll summarize this, put it into the X post as well. DJI, NDX, at least, we'll see. Price target, and I'll post about those as well, doing some extensions there. Gold, I will do the same because this video is getting very, very long, and I'll do that for X. Next up, Bitcoin. Won't trade below 70K for this cycle. Maybe it gets a quick spike there, and you can say I'm wrong. I don't think it's going to close under there for this cycle. If it does, I would think that the cycle is more than likely over at that point. But yeah, in terms of Bitcoin, won't trade below 70K. Again, more updates. How do we get to that point? So let's get over to BTC now. We've done a lot on the overall markets. Let's do some Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies here. So 70K is, of course, right through that previous consolidation before the market broke out. And the tops are at 74K. So anything underneath those levels would essentially mean that all of this was just an absolute fake out, and no one sees value in it, and they are about to dump it back to where it was, which is not a strong sign that the market likes Bitcoin at this point. It is possible, you have to accept that it is possible, but for most they're going to say it's very, very unlikely, or they'll just say no flipping chance at all, and they won't even consider it a possibility. I think you have to consider everything, and all that means is that, well, the market's changed, you can't change it, it's doing what it needs to do, and you have no way of saying otherwise. So I don't think it's going to be under 70K just because of everything else I'm looking at. I'm open to being wrong on that, of course. In terms of where I think it might go, I have a couple of critical support levels here, at least in the short term, not the long term, but the short term. 85 to $87,000, and then the major 50% comes in at about $78,000 to $79,000, just above this little top here. So anything to that level is still above the 50%. So in terms of this correction, if this still has further to go in the bull market, I wouldn't expect any closes really under 78K. I've just given myself a little bit of breathing room here at 70,000. Now, the big one that I've got down below, I think it'll hit at least $122,000 this cycle. I know some probably think it's friggin' ridiculous. It's got to be 200 or 300. you wait and see. Let's just wait and see where this correction comes in. And I said here, but not before lower prices. At the moment, it seems like we would most likely see lower prices, probably come back and test something at the 90s, if not a little lower, as I've looked at here, the mid 80s. And I'm even open to 78, 79K as well. And I always hear the same thing. People say, well, that's what everyone's thinking. It's not. Not everyone is thinking that. I've seen comments for even further at 70K. Some people think it's even going to be 60K, and some don't think it's going to crash that far at all. So I don't think there's a consensus on that just yet. But there are my main ones there. Oh, and for BTC, in terms of the price targets, 121,940, call it a round number at 122. That's my price extension from the cycle low to the March top, projected off the August low, and 100% we've just hit. That was 107, so basically dead on to that price point. We got the correction. And should this thing wind up again and we start to test higher prices, 122 is on there. And for you guys that are stuck around this long, my next one is at about 136. That's for that overall range. And for a bit of fun, we can throw on the shorter term range here and see if we get a price cluster. And we do. We get 150% of the 2023-2024 range projected off that low, comes in as well at 122,500. So there is some price confluence going on there at about the $122,000 level. Now, if we look at the price targets a little higher, 200% of that range is at $147,000. And then we start to get well and truly up there, 165, 171. So it could be a bit of a price cluster there in the high 160s. And then you get 300% and 250% of those two ranges. So some pretty significant ranges coming in at $195,000. That is obviously, anything's possible. I just think we have a long way to go to get there. Plus, it's quite a large extension of this entire range. I dare say 200K might be out of the question for this cycle. I don't like saying that myself because I want to see more than 200. But realistically speaking, especially with what is happening at the moment, seems like it could be like a 195-ish, maybe a 190-ish top price there if it is able to get that much further. And yeah, look, for shits and giggles, I'm throwing out there, I don't think this market has it in it to get above the 200K in 2025. But if it happened to get to 196, you could possibly call it 200 and say that I was wrong. Either way, that's my thoughts on Bitcoin at the moment. Let's just take it one step at a time. I know there's always crazies in the comments, but that's the game on YouTube, right? Hopefully you can take from this what's going to work for you and see how it plays out in your own portfolios as we go throughout 2025. Speaking of which, here is crypto. Here is my last forecasts. Crypto, ETH will outperform Bitcoin in 2025. Let's have a look at that first. So this is ETH BTC on a 12-month chart. So basically just an annual chart, a yearly chart. You have a barely green bar, then a massive green bar, red, red, barely green, massive green, red, red. And we've done 3 this year. So out of the limited data that we have here, you know, the 9 or so years going into our 10th year, I suspect that the year of 2025 will be green. Could be a small green, could be a large green. Either way, it outperforms Bitcoin. By how much? It's anyone's guess. So I'm going to throw up another difficult price target here, let's say. And I'll say ETH BTC will close the year higher, so in the green. But then to add on to that, ETH BTC will not break 0.09. It seems obvious now, I guess, that it's never going to get, well, in this case, not get above this level. You got all these tops that are in play here, you got 50% levels. But if it does get a move on and everyone becomes more bullish and excited about it again, that will flip. And people say, well, it's definitely possible and ETH is going to break new all-time highs or something like that. You know, it's going to flip Bitcoin if it is able to get that extreme. I don't know if it will, but for now, even any sort of move to the upside to get to our overbalance in time and price trigger of 0.046, that is going to be great news for ETH and the altcoins as well. In terms of a percentage from where it is, that's a nice 26% move more than BTC. If it's able to get to the 50% at 5.2%, that's a 44% move, greater than what Bitcoin can do. And that also includes if Bitcoin drops and ETH stays still. That could mean that you would still see ETH beating Bitcoin, you know, as in it's outperforming Bitcoin because it's not dropping by as much either. And then some higher targets here at around 6%. That's a 6% Bitcoin value. You're at 67% gain from the current price of ETH BTC. So I think there's plenty more upside to go for Ethereum. By how much might not be everyone's cup of tea. Maybe they want hundreds of % against BTC with their own cryptos that they're investing in or gambling on. But overall, I think that's a pretty reasonable place to look at. I don't think ETH is going to get above that 0.09%, especially with how far down it is currently against its Bitcoin value. A lot of those tops are in play there at around 8% value, plus the peaks there at 8.8% value. So I think it's going to be a pretty difficult game there. And then if I take a look at the 50% levels, if we use this low, there it is, 3% to the top, comes in at around 5.7-ish%. And then the overall top there as well is at around 6%. So there's a lot of overhead resistance there for ETH to get above any of those particular levels. Did you really think we're going to make it under 30 minutes? Probably not. But either way, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel. I still have one more wild card for you guys as well for this 2025 period, and that is the decade cycle. Now, you may have seen me post about this before. However, I think it's still something to keep in the back of our minds and portfolios, I guess, because the 5th year of the decade is typically vertical. It's usually the best year. Now, 10 years ago in 2015, it wasn't. 20 years ago in 2005, it was still an up year, but it wasn't the greatest year. So 2015 was still a correction. But if you can understand other cycles as well, and I suppose I'm putting this at the end of the video because you guys who are around this long understand that it takes a little bit more than just looking at one data point. Well, you've got the Shemitah cycle that happened in 2015, and that corrected the market and again moved higher from that point. 2005 wasn't the greatest year, but you're coming off the back of a mega bull run from the .com boom and then subsequent bust. And then 2005 was still a positive year, still a green year, but not a huge green year. Now, 1995 was a much better looking year. You can see that was part of the .com boom era. So January 1995, big move up into the end of the year. It was basically straight up, which looks very similar to the forecast curve here, straight up. Now, as I said in the intro, I don't often look at narratives. I don't like doing narratives. It's just, I like to focus on price. And if it's showing us a strong trend, a strong direction, then keep going with the damn trend. Forget about what everyone else is talking about because it doesn't matter. What matters is the price because that's how you make money. You don't make money off people's opinions, right? We're looking at 1995, big year up. What if, and remember, I don't focus on price, not the narratives. What if AI started to get really crazy again and things really did start to build up into this final peak? And what video would be complete if I didn't show you the this one right here, right? The 18-year cycle, winner's curse phase into this peak. What if we got into this year ending in 5, big pump up to the upside? How does that happen? Well, it's the end of the cycle as well, the winner's curse phase. Maybe AI takes over and, well, in terms of the narrative, that is, not necessarily everything that we use day to day. And the narrative takes over and people go absolutely bananas with it for stocks and just investing in it, and everything goes crazy into that year. That could replicate similar to what happened 30 years ago at the end of the .com boom. You had this big run up, and maybe it keeps going into 2026. You can see the 6th year here, there's January and July, all the way to the end there. Where is it? December. There it is there. So it's not an easy ride in the 6th year, but it's still an up year. The 5th year, much better move to the upside there. So just thinking of narratives, and I left it to the end on purpose because, as I said, I focus on price. The 5th year can be pretty significant. That's it here. And we do have a narrative building in the background. Could be AI. It could be a combination of things that continue to ride this trend higher into that final peak. and then we get the collapse when everyone is in and everyone thinks that there is no chance of the bull market ending. This video is ending here. Like and subscribe. I tried my best. Follow up on a monthly basis, at least here on the channel, so you can see these videos. But of course, I've got videos coming out every single day with more updates on the market. And everything that I've talked about is in the video description. X, so follow my account there. Follow Michael's YouTube channel. And also the TIA Premium and GAN Swing Pro in the TIA Indicator Suite. Thanks again, guys. Really excited for 2025. I don't think it's going to be as clean or as easy to forecast as 2023 and 2024 were, only because we are now getting towards the end of the cycle and more people are flipping bullish than were bearish in 2023, 2024. When things are down, when things are difficult at those lows, I think they're the easiest times. Now, this period here, this is why I think 2025 could be more difficult to forecast. Therefore, I expect more challenges along the way with these forecasts. I've said goodbye once. I'll say it again. Cheers, and I'll see you guys back here at the next video. Take care. Peace out. And if I don't see you, have a happy New Year and safe New Year. Cheers.